Sharme, peace and freedom. Nini, welcome. I'm Reverend Dr. Queen Mother Imakhu. It's my pleasure to be here with you again tonight. And I am going to be true to my word about coming on every night. We have a lot to accomplish this summer. And if you're doing the work, like I am doing my best to do the work, then we should see some major change at the end of this 42-day cycle. We have entered into our comedic cleansing cycle, which leads us up to Weapon Put, which is our Kemetic New Year. So this is a time of great introspection. Today is actually St. John's feast day. We talked yesterday about St. John's Eve and the correlations, the connections between St. John the Baptist and Sebek and Besu, and also in Haitian Vodun tradition, Ogun Balanjo. Now, peace and blessings, Sister Constance. How are you? Um, I am following up with something that was touched on yesterday. In fact, Sister Constance asked if we could talk about this, and I said we'd talk about this today because I brought up the topic of trauma bonding and how many of us are caught in this place of feeling obligated to stay someplace where we are experiencing abuse and the abuse that comes or the trauma that comes from that abuse, and that makes it forms a sort of a glue and a very uneasy alliance because you don't really know how to get unstuck. Also, you feel a sense of false loyalty simply because you're trying to be true to either an individual um, who has created a cult of personality or the cause, okay? And, uh, or we have many family components or beliefs that come through family or from our cultural programming or from community programming that basically condemns us to stay in situations that are not healthy for us, who discourage us from calling out situations that are not healthy for us, and who feel as though you are a sellout or a traitor if you speak out. Blackberry Beauty, hello. I just ran across your page and needed to hear this message. Give thanks and praise. Welcome. And I know that this is a message that impacts many of us. I'm coming out of years of cultural, religious, spiritual, um, community trauma and trauma bonding, which is tough because if you identify it, then you are labeled or you're ignored, or people will do their best to talk smack about you in order to get you to ignore the man behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. You've got all this brouhaha going on here, but really the one who's pulling the strings is back there, is just some little phony dude who's projecting this image onto everybody to make him seem like he's so much bigger than he really is, as opposed to putting out there what really is the absolute truth, what you see with your eyes and not what you are led to believe. So I dug up the notes that I created. And by the way, let me just also say, please share. If you're new to the channel, then please, if you're on Facebook, then please like my page and share. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel and please share with a friend. This is an absolutely necessary message because so many of us have been affected in this way. And so let's start out by addressing what trauma is. In the Kemetic tradition, there's a word for trauma. Well, actually, there are a few, but the main one is eh, 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 ah. AH, or with what has a diacritical mark over it, so it makes it a short I or short E sound. Eh. And it is depicted as a man who is crouched down and who has a hatchet behind his back. Now, that is usually used to indicate attack. Now, that can be to protect yourself. It can be to deflect someone. It could be for positive protection. It could be for negative protection. But the idea is when you have this symbol, then it indicates that there's going to be some kind of strike, someone who's going to be injured, willfully injured. So, means grief, sadness, prejudice. And, I want to, let me just clarify also, I was saying the diacritical mark being over the A. It is AH. The diacritical mark is under the H. That makes it ah, ah, ah. Well, actually, there are variations with the with sound, okay? And another word is isfet. Those of us who are in the Kemetic community are very familiar with that because it means chaos. It means disorder. There is no harmony. There is no ma'at, no harmony, reciprocity, balance, higher love, justice, disorder. And the words, well, the term shes means suffering. When you're suffering, when you're in pain, when you're going through emotional, undue emotional stress, something that can be perpetual or it can be short term. But uh, that is symbolized by a lance, which is indicating suffocation. You're being choked off, right? So you're being choked. So some types of assault are assault on our senses, an assault on our creature comforts. Excuse me. I don't have my air conditioner on, so I don't want to be suffering sitting here sharing this with you. So grateful for water. And by the way, before I go further, I just want to say, I generally go to the Passaic River, which is nearby me, to pray. And where I usually go, today I discovered that this pond that is nearby is completely dried up. I've been here for a year and a half and have over a year and a half. I have never seen that pond dry. And all of the geese and ducks that usually inhabit the area are gone. In our tradition, we pay close attention to the water and the messages of the water. When a water source dries up, then it means that the water spirits there are not happy. And so it is bringing its form of, a message of discontent when it leaves. When I went to the river, and I had to walk a long way to get to the river because there are a bunch of things now that have been brought in to block that area, because it used to be a port there, and it was a port where enslaved Africans were brought in. So one of the reasons I chose to pray at that area of the river as opposed to an area that I used to pray in another part of town, same river. And actually it's funny because if you just keep going, it brings you around to near where I live. But I chose to pray where I've been praying because I could sense the pain of the waters. Water is memory. Water holds memory, and water actually can bring positive change if you have trauma. Every time that I drink water, I'm always saying thank you, and I'm also just putting in positive words. You know how we do. For those of you who've been on with us And when we've had ceremony, it's a good thing to speak positive things into the water. So when I would go to the water and I would pray and I would speak loving, positive words to the water, because the fact that there is a lot of Agent Orange also that is still in the river after all of this time, going back to the 60s when Agent Orange was dumped into the river. So it was kind of sad today. I brought some flowers because of it being St. John's feast day, and giving thanks to the various guardians who are associated with it. Um, but I just felt so very sad as I had my water on again in the background and my guitar music. Guitar, which is a soothing instrument in the Kemetic language, neferet is the word for the guitar, or a lute. And it is also the word for beauty and success and joy. So guitar music brings you all of those things. And so I'm always happy to share it with you. So anyway, I'll be anxious to see what's going to happen, um, because of what is happening over at the river. And actually, I was with a group called Ama a few weeks ago where we did a cleanup of the area of the river I used to go to, which is in a public park. And so much trauma there. People just throwing their trash. And we have here in Newark these scooters and also bicycles that people can rent. And there's been a problem with people abusing that system, because they'll rent them and then just leave them anywhere. They won't bring them back to a station, an indicated station where they're supposed to leave them for safety. People will just leave them on people's lawns. Um, we had one out in front of the building, um, where I live, about a week one time. Whose is this? In the park, there were actually two of the vehicles that were buried. Okay, they were in the ground. Somebody went to the trouble of hiding them. I mean, dig. Why don't you just take it back? Anyway, so in talking about the river and talking about the blood and the water that we have in our bodies, and recognizing that the veins are associated with river currents, and the fact that we should be mindful of how we take care of ourselves, and that goes for our environment, the people who are in our environment, and the choices we make as to what we engage in and who we surround ourselves with, because your body will let you know when things are wrong. So it is also an invasion on what we know as comfortable, safe, or happy way of life, such as cultural practices, habits, traditions. We grow up being taught certain things. And, as we get older, we realize, okay, a lot of these things apply, or it can be, wow, I grew up in a really jacked up environment and none of these things apply. Or you can come to a place where you just are accepting, okay, my life was jacked up, but look, this is what I know. So I'm just going to accept this. That has an impact on your body and on your mind. And uh, so it's important to see what is not appropriate for you, and to be willing to make the change once you see that there's something that's just not right. Unfairness is another form of attack. That's injustice. Our practice is based on being fair, being mindful, especially doing the best you can when you are going through healing, but being mindful of the fact that you still have an obligation to be the best person that you could be, and work toward making that change and making those adjustments. Chabu is the word for restoration. Um, disconnect from family or ancestors is also a way of experiencing trauma. Now, over the last, I would say like 50, no, 60 years. I'm 64. So I would say the last more than 60 years, we see that there's been a great push to reclaim what was taken from us regarding cultural traditions. Now, some people have come, and they've come here willingly, and they decide to suppress who they've been, the practices that they had, so that they would fit into the so-called American dream, so that they would not be singled out, so they wouldn't be considered strange. And certainly there gets to be a place where we grow, where we decide, okay, again, this does not work for me anymore, and so that's okay. I'm going to just walk away from this. But then there is comfort in knowing who you are and being able to see a touchstone, or to be able to recognize and connect with certain ways. This is our language. Some people will come here speaking a certain language and then discard it. Uh, so many things, and so we have a lot of us who are just lost now, especially those of us who have ancestry dealing with enslavement. Identities lost, and that creates a strong desire in many cases to reclaim what was taken, so that we feel fulfilled, so that we have a deeper understanding of who we are. Certain practices. Well, why is it that we don't speak about these behaviors that go on, but they must be connected to some source, right? I recently learned about a lot of the patterns that were in my family from spending a lot of time um, with a Haitian community, because that's part of my blood. So when I did that, and I'm seeing all these different things, I was like, wow, my grandfather used to do that. We used to eat this. Okay. My mother used to do that. My uncle used to do this, not knowing the source. Just like the way that my grandfather cooked roast pork, it's identical to Puerto Rican pernilillo. And we have Puerto Rican blood as well. We're very Caribbean in our family, even though we didn't present as that way. But the family continued the practices of being with others who are like you by continuing to marry people who evidently were in the same area, but also kept up the same practices and who have the same blood. But in order to fit in, it stopped being spoken of. And there wasn't an identifiable source for these different things. So, peace, cuz, how you doing this evening? It's good to see you. So, many of us really went overboard. And please share, and please drop a line and say hello, especially if you can identify with any of these things. When you are desperate to reclaim yourself, sometimes you can put yourself in some vicarious, no, that's not the word I want. Treacherous is the word that I want. Situations, and not realize it until you're in it. Oh, wow. That sounds so good. Just cooked a fabulous meal with summer squash that you grew. That's beautiful. See, going back to the land, when you know that the land is healthy, and will indicate that it's healthy when it's able to grow fruits and vegetables for you. We have so much toxicity in so many areas now where things won't grow. So that's a blessing that you were able to do that. So the desperation of reclamation. So during the 50s, 60s, 70s, especially, a lot of folks entered into this reclamation movement. Now, you had the so-called hippie movement, and you had people who were talking about being close to the earth and respecting the earth, and that's the way that their ancestors were. That's the way all of our ancestors were in order to survive. Okay, whether you were from Latvia or whether you were from the Caribbean, okay, and wanting to learn those practices that were so common for where your people came from. It became sort of something that was insistent within you. For Black cultural groups that developed, there were so many. There were some people who, well, no, a lot. There were a lot of people who took advantage. All right. And so groups developed basically around a personality. So these groups became a cult of personality or specific personalities. And we became enamored with what they were saying, with the way they dressed, with the throwing around of African words and dropping in some African looking traditions, and not really fully knowing that what we were in at the time, the group that we were in, was not necessarily healthy. And a lot of us experienced abuse in various forms. There was sexual abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse for sure, uh, certain practices that ended up being more of brainwashing techniques. Because as we became familiar with metaphysics, and there was a lot more available information with reprinting of old materials from the 1700s, 1800s, from the age of enlightenment and the whole Madame Blavatsky New Age um, movement, and the misinterpretation of our ancient mystical traditions. But they were drug up again, and people basically learned how to manipulate others through the misuse of this misinformation. So you had a lot of so-called gurus who popped up, and we were fascinated by them, but we were also hurt. And so then what do when you find that you're in a situation you think you're the only one? Let me tell you, when you start speaking out, then you find 9 times out of 10, you're not the only one. And I have to say, actually, this is not something that just happened in these Black cultural groups. This also happened in churches as well. Okay. Chanel, how are you this evening? Charmaine, get an affair. So then you found that there were people who were very clear about the fact that there was a lot that was not happening that was right, but continued in the practice because of this false loyalty that we developed. And I was starting to say it wasn't just with these Black cultural groups, because I also experienced this in church as well. I talked a little about that the other night. And, there were a lot of us who stayed and put up with it because, well, this is our neighborhood church. Well, don't say nothing because you don't want to disrupt things. And so trauma and traumatizing persisted. Here we are now. We've had years to analyze what kind of an effect that has had on us. And there's that part of you that wants to belong. Everybody wants to belong somewhere, right? That's just general human nature. And then also there is the desire to really get the teachings, right? So it can take you further, so you can become a better person. And also because of the fact that you have a sense that you have a calling, and that you need a guide to get you there. Listen, it's important in spiritual practices, in cultural practices, to have people who know what they're talking about, who will lead you. And it can be a little tricky when you come to a place of realization regarding values that you no longer choose to uphold because they differ from what the group is, because the group's values are not what you thought they were, and these people pretended to have these certain values, but that's only because that's what they were taught to perpetuate, because coming from the leadership, they were teaching going along with these differing values. So you have this whole other sphere of energy and belief that is developing, that you're getting pulled into, and a lot of times they'll break you down, break you down, break you down, until you just accept this is the way that we act, this is the way we conduct ourselves, and this is just how it's going to be. Even though we're going to pretend something else to the world, in order to attract people, we're going to just keep on projecting out this false image. And so then once you get in and you realize that it's not what you thought it was, then you have a choice as to whether you're going to move forward or whether you're going to move out. Um, I've walked away from a whole lot. Walked away from my church. I walked away from this church group that I had been involved in that had also become a cult of personality. My church was not so much about a cult of personality, but it was about a lot of acceptable behavior that was unaddressed. But also moving on to other different groups, I experienced sexual trauma. I experienced being straight up lied to, um, encouraged to walk away from a powerful position that I held at one point with this and I was, at this point, I just started studying with this very, very well known Afro religious group. And walking away only to find that it was a huge mistake. Anytime you have someone who discourages you from walking in your power and encourages you instead to come and be amongst their group, we're your family, look after you, listen, we'll give you this position if you come. Generally, that's a red flag. It's a huge red flag, because you should be encouraged, not discouraged. And any true leader or people who are in leadership, who really care about you, are going to want to see you succeed. They're not going to do things to try to encourage you to just give in, to allow yourself to be broken down so that way you can fit into the group. And unfortunately, the ones who are the most targeted are the most intellectual and the most psychic, because when you're able to see into what's going on, then that makes you a threat to the rest of the group, because then you can tell. I spoke the other day about how in the book of Ptahhotep, it exhorts people to speak out when things are wrong, knowing when to speak, when not to speak, and that you're holding back information that is hurtful to the community, hurtful to other individuals, is only making you complicit. So, Constance says, I grew up evangelical, and even when I left, I still ended up in consciousness and yoga communities that abused in the same way as evangelicals. Yes, I was so unhealed, trauma bonded to this type of energy. Yes, see, even in yoga, for sure. I mean, people don't realize that's a whole thing, like, yeah, hi, but then there's this other arrogance also that comes through it. People, they get certified, and especially after not having a whole lot of time in the yoga practice, but because they get certified, all of a sudden they believe that there's some kind of a savior or God, or they are superior to other people. Why? Because they can twist themselves up in these forms, and also because the breathing practices a lot of times are not correct, and so it truly messes up your head. All right, I mean, truly. So I can tell you for myself, it's a challenge in teaching yoga, because well, when you have people who want to become yoga teachers, because all they want is that shine. They just want that extra attention. Oh, look what I can do, right? And generally, it's attached to their own feelings of insecurity or an already overblown ego, where they have found this to be their way in for people to ooh and ah over them. And it's unfortunate because of the fact that there are so many people who don't realize that, if your yoga teacher is groping you, that's not appropriate. If your yoga teacher is body shaming you, that is not appropriate. If your yoga teacher is touching you at all, I don't touch. I don't believe in that. I believe in keeping your hands off, because it can be invasive touch to some others. You can just put your hand on somebody and all of a sudden they can be triggered. There's a lot of trauma that's in the community in so many, many ways. And in yoga classes, that's a place of vulnerability, because you are dressed in hopefully comfortable clothing, but then you have people who are dressed in clothes that would definitely not be comfortable to you, because it's showing off the body line, and maybe you don't look like that, right? But then you also have people who are very self-assured, who come in their yoga gear and like this is what I look like. Okay, bump y'all, and I'm gonna get my class. That's a good attitude. Okay, but when you have a teacher who shames you because of how you look, because of what you wear, because you can't do a certain pose, and especially if they won't let you touch them. I've known of people who I know people who have said that they have told their teachers to please not touch them. People will go over and try to adjust them into a position, and it's not necessary. And even though people have said, don't touch me, that the teacher will continue to touch them because they are trying to get in their heads, and they are trying to rule over them and come across as though they are truly the guru. All right. I have also seen this in an Aikido class. I was in a relationship with someone. He was my fiance at the time. And so the man who ran the class was also a psychology major. And if there was one thing that he knew how to do, it was to mind manipulate. Absolutely. And so yeah, that's another whole story for another day. But I know that one time I went to class with him because he was trying to encourage me. I was like, okay, maybe I'll just support him, and maybe I'll just take the class too. Okay. I said, I want to check it out first, because I didn't trust this dude. All right. And I'm watching, and he was talking with a very gentle tone of voice, big, muscular cut brother. Okay. And charming and all that. Okay. And so he called out my fiance and told him to come and sit at his feet. And so he got into position and sat at his feet. And as he was talking to the class, I'm seeing that he's tapping the top of his head, rhythmically, just tapping his. And I said, that's not cool. And especially because by that time I had been a metaphysician for years. I'm like, I know that trick. Okay. So after class, I said to my then fiance, so did you pick up on how he was consistently tapping the top of your head? And then after that, you were like Pavlovian, I mean, you just saw, he would say, do such and such. You'd be like, it wasn't just from this is the teacher students thing. It was that it was like my fiance kind of like vacated, right? So he said, he was doing that. I said, you didn't feel him tapping your head. You didn't feel him tapping your head. He said, no. But he had a loyalty that developed to this man that was ultimately destructive. Okay. And so he came to realize that who he was. But everybody in the class was just like, like, wow. When I'm in situations like that, then it's a red flag to me. Just like I went to this bogus real estate workshop today, right? Now, as it is, I'm going to real estate school next month. I'm already signed up for my classes. I'm so excited. I wanted to do this all my life. So I'm really, really excited. But, I said, let me check this class out. It's one of these things where they advertise on social media and say that they're coming into your area, they're doing a tour, and learn about being able to flip houses and blah blah blah, and you don't need any money. And I said, I just want to see what the hustle is. I want to see if there's anything that's real about it, or if it's a hustle. It was a hustle. I didn't even stay, and I saw the different patterning going on with the person who was speaking, and the very measured way that he was speaking, and everybody in the room was like, and I asked for a chair to sit in the back. Now, I was already in the back row, more people were coming, but I didn't feel comfortable there, right? I was on the back row and on the edge on the aisle. And there were a lot of heads in front of me. I'm a short person, okay? So I couldn't see, but there was just something about being in that group that just did not make me feel comfortable. So I asked if I could just move to the back. They had an area like this. This is where the chairs ended. And then back here, there was a little area where there were no chairs, and they were expecting to fill in more chairs, right? And so here you had the aisle, and I wanted to be able to see. So I was back here. I just, when he told me, oh, well, I can seat you in the front. This dude who was seating, and the way he was seating everybody, he's getting everybody a chair personally, okay, making everybody feel so, oh, you're so special to us. We appreciate you, okay? Even from signing in, go to sign in, and this was held at a local famous hotel. And so I sign in. As soon as I come, the one dude who's signing people in, he sees me. He's like, oh, here's the queen. Here's the queen. And so then I said, it's funny you should say that to me. I said, that's what, people call me Queen Mother Imakhu. And so he was like, see, I knew, I could see, I knew, but I had registered under my government name. So anyway, he found me on the list, and, here's your material, here are your materials, and, go right that way. And I said, hold on. I said, so do y'all have coffee back there? Y'all know the coffee thing. I told you the coffee story the other day. Yeah, I'm still trying to just cut it down. I've got a lot. These past few days, I've been better, all right? But I needed some coffee, all right? So, and I know that they were serving Starbucks in the bistro area. Usually they would have somebody who would do it for you during the day, because that was one of my hangout spots, this hotel. After hours, a lot of the movers and shakers would go there, and we'd be there with our laptops, and we'd be exchanging information about what was going on in the city. So I knew the place very well. But my thing was, do y'all have coffee in the back? Oh, no, we only have some water. But you can go over there and ask if there's a barista who will give you coffee. And so I went over, and unfortunately, the barista was gone. So I was like, okay, that's one. Because actually, when they said they had no coffee, I said, come on, y'all. I literally said, come on, you. But, going to an event, if there's no coffee, that's a big red flag, okay? You don't think enough of your attendees to at least provide some daggone coffee. Come on. We're not even talking about some gourmet coffee. We're talking about just some basic coffee. Okay. So then I'm go to the halls, through the hallway, and find the next step. Okay, you got to go behind this door and over here in order to get into the little conference room. Okay. Then here's super host. Hi, come on in. Have a seat for you over here. And then taking the chair, pulling it out for me and all that. And I don't want to sit here. This seat doesn't work for me. So can I sit in the back? No, I can put you up in the front. There's a place right up in the front. I said, I don't want to move up to the front. I want to stay in the back, And so it was like, well, we want you here in the group. I said, there's only a little bit of space. Okay. So you can't accommodate me by just getting me a chair to put it here where I can see. All right. No, no. So, okay. I could tell that was not what he had been programmed. Okay. So I said, I'll just stand here. So put my glasses on, and I'm watching the workshop and I'm watching the flow of it. And I was like, man, this is like some brainwashing setup, right? And so eventually the man realized I was serious. I wasn't moving. Okay. So he comes over and he says, well, I mean, I can bring you over a chair, and, you can sit, there's going to be a portion where there's a break, and we know that people are going to come and sign up for our courses. So I can move the chair for you then. I said, that's all I asked for, you know? So he got me the chair, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm listening. And I said, this is all stuff I know I'm going to learn in my real estate class. And plus, again, I just didn't like the tone. Everybody who came in, come on in. We give you a seat. This hyper enthusiasm, right? So I left. I got myself together. I went to the door, and the dude was on the other side of the door, and he was like, oh, hey. I said, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And I left. And then I go to the door, to the place where they have the table set up for the sign up, right? And the dude, who was really tall, wow, he was very tall and imposing, because he was seated before. I said thank you, and he said, you're leaving? And he stood up, like, he was like, why? I went. He said, you're not going to get this anyplace else. I said, I'm actually starting real estate school next month. So all the stuff that you're teaching, can't I learn this in my real estate class? Well, yeah. But see, if you take our class, then you're going to get a bonus. You'll only have to pay $295. I said, I'm already in a school. All right. Well, I'll be 4 days a week for several weeks. And so why should I kick out any extra money for stuff that I'm going to already learn? Oh, but you'll want to come back. You'll want to come back. I said, I'm good. Thanks. I mean, he really seemed insulted that I was leaving. It's like, how dare you escape, I mean, wow. So I went to the vegan spot that was a block away. I didn't get any coffee. I got a nice hibiscus drink, and I got a nice vegan lunch. And I sat there and I said, this is so sad, because I know that a lot of the people that are in the room, and of course it was mostly Black and brown folks in there, who were looking for a leg up. And this was an opportunity for them to be able to sign on to this loan company where I'm sure they were going to pay exorbitant amounts of money to get a loan from them in order to be able to flip houses. So, and see, here's the other thing. While I was there, I started Googling. I said, let me find the reviews on this business, right? They weren't good. Don't go. It's a scam. No problem. Okay. I'm going. So I felt bad because I felt like it was a waste of time, but at least I know that these kinds of things are out there. Why? Because over the years, I've attended so many things that have been similar to this, whether it was multi-level marketing, whether it was some mastermind group, and it's always the same kind of hyper feel. Yeah, come on, we're gonna do this, And then later you find out, this is a bunch of hype, and you end up with less money in your pocket, right? So Constance says, I've been ashamed for resting in a yoga class. And they say go at your own pace, but the teachers at the studio wanted conformity and groupthink. Nah. No, I always say, this is, well, first of all, our principle is Sajem and Kat, listen to the body and to the intuition. You don't worry about what the rest of the people in the class are doing. You listen to what is good for you. So if you need to rest, then you need to rest. See, people can actually be sued in situations like that, because if you're encouraging somebody who needs to rest to push through, then what do you do if they pass out? or what happens if they end up hurting themselves because of the fact that they were not, because they were overdoing or overstretching, or because they were dizzy, so that's not a safe class. Just want to let you know. um so this place that we're in right now, where there are other people out there who are like me, who have been through different groups and who also have been in or are in positions of leadership, who realize, you know what, I need to re-examine why I'm in this and what is happening to me, and then coming to a place of realizing that you've really been severely hurt and you are just a number. And these groups will seek you out for what they can either get out of your pocket, or for um, what skill you can bring to the group, the organization, the church, but not really care about you. It seems like they care about you, but they don't. And then you eventually find out that they don't care about you. What do you do? Especially if you're in leadership, because how do you tell people, listen, what was true for me before is no longer true for me, because I'm finding it's hurtful to me. I'm in therapy now because of all of this. And then you go out of your way to try not to replicate what happened to you, because you came through this system where things were done this way and then this way, and oh, this was the ancestral way of doing things. And a lot of that, to be very honest with you, is garbage. There are people who will exploit you because of the fact that you believe that they have the true information, simply because of the fact that they may come from the motherland, okay? They may come from the Caribbean, and have repatriated here, but then have found us here to be a gold mine. Why? Because we're so desperate. Kate says, I'm sitting here at this very moment with my narcissist trying so hard to pull me back into a cycle of devaluing, calling me all that he is, and thinking he is entitled to say whatever, wanting me to cry and be hurt. Robert Jackson hacked Instagram, who exposed his actions. So, Kate, it's kind of looking like you're here spamming, right? I wish you luck on your journey. And I'm going to delete this. And this is another form of abuse. Rude daughter, how are you? Wow. Okay. Where was I? The internet has given life to so many people who are just spammers, scammers. Hmm. Where was I? Blessed and grateful. That's wonderful to hear. Give thanks. Yeah. So I was saying, when you're a teacher and you're a leader in this position, and actually when you've even been thrust into that, listen, I've shared over and over my reluctant Jonah story, how this is not where I expected to be. Teaching was not what I wanted to do. And how, my focus as an artist was getting to Broadway. Okay. My focus is not, over the years, I have to say, because the fact that I really don't appreciate a lot of the abuse and narcissism. I don't appreciate any of the abuse and narcissism. Let me clarify that. That's in show business, because I've seen it all. That's just another thing. Oh, my Lord. As a working artist, I have seen so much over the years, and I've walked away from a lot. And believe me, the casting couch is real. And also producers who are out here who are going to promise you this, that, and the other. I've been on tour with well-known producers, doing this one particular show, and have gotten, they call it stiffed, okay? When you don't get the right money, right? And you're promised the moon and the stars, and it's just a big ploy to get you to come and do this instead, and do this for free, or do this for less money. uh, it's, so there's abuse that's in that too. Let me just talk about general cult-like behavior abuse. She's Muse. Duau, can now to address me with an Echeret Charme. So, Mucheli, is that you? Let me know who you are. Give thanks. Charme, get un affair to you. Okay, in groups. This can be a cultural group. This can be in an activist group. Um, Spiritual groups, of course. Politics. And I've been in all of these circles where I've seen people just put other folks literally under their spell because they're great manipulators. And also, there are those who know how to energetically move a room. And see, I think also that has a lot to do with why dude from the seminar today he wanted me to sit with the group so that the energy would not be broken. Yeah, this side over here, this side over here, and then the aisle. And I wanted to sit back here away from the group and on directly in the aisle, not in the aisle, but I mean, aligned with the aisle, but in the back, so I could have a clear view of the screen. But he was very insistent on trying to put me in with the group. I don't want to get caught up in the group energy, because I was already seeing how they were doing the Pavlovian responses. Do we want to do this? No. Do we want to do this? Yes. And I also found out they had plants that they put in also to keep the hype going, right? Oh, Muchili, okay. Give thanks. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. So, in any of those situations, and let me go back to show business for a minute. It was once said to me by another high priest that the ultimate high priest or priestess that you will ever see is a person who commands the stage at a concert. And that's truth. As a performing artist, I can tell you there is nothing like it, because you are putting out certain energy with everything that you have, and with the love and passion of your craft, and you're connecting with others who appreciate it. And it's a whole other level of mastery. It is. I've been watching these Juan Gabriel videos. I shared with you about Juan Gabriel the other day. He's my new musical boo in the ethers. My general musical go-to boo is Mark Anthony when I need to have elevation. Okay, so because of the fact that his voice is spellbinding. Juan Gabriel. Even when even just before he died, that man was 66 and was still mesmerizing audiences, and was masterful, absolutely masterful at his craft of not only being a vocalist, but being an entertainer overall. It was said that a Juan Gabriel show was an extravaganza that you had to experience. I'm so sorry that I missed that. He just died in 2016. It's 8 years ago now. But there's a ton of stuff on the internet, on YouTube, his performances, his songs, duets that he did. I'm just completely just blown away. and highly respectful of his level of mastery. You know, I mean, he's on the stage doing all this stuff, and then they show the audience, and it's this huge stadium. He was still filling stadiums all the way up until the end, you know, stadiums and concert halls. Even after he got sick, he was still pumping out the energy and still performing, you know. That's mastery. And when people take that same level of mastery and apply it to trying to win you over in a group, and you're so taken in by the charisma and the person then knowing exactly all the right buzzwords to say, right? The right gestures, eye contact, all of that. Add to that knowing how to pull energy and transmute it so that it all comes to you. And where people then don't even begin to question, right? That's where it becomes dangerous. I was on some political campaigns where I did what I needed to, but then would walk off because people who were also on the campaign were so frenzied and so threatened by others because they wanted to be considered special for their contribution. So then they started attacking other people to try to knock them off, and they caused confusion within the campaign simply because the fact that they were so hung up on the political candidate and wanting to please the political candidate. And so, you know, and the candidate, instead of straightening out all of the trauma that was happening, because people were resorting to bullying, name calling, like, what? I don't need this. Okay. I really don't. There are plenty of other things to do in my life, and, you know, obligations that I have. And so, no, I didn't sign up for this. But that happens. And, you know, we're in a place in this country right now where we're seeing another round of certain cult of personality that may become a threat once again to our country here. But politics in general, you know, I mean, if you can get people to rally around you and really believe that you can take them to some higher place, correct the things that you feel are not fair to you, bring things into your world that are going to enhance your life, then a lot of people will just completely surrender themselves to this cult leader, yes, and become blind in their allegiance. You know, it's not good. When you don't have a strong sense of self, when you are disconnected from your cognitive thinking, that's where the problems really begin. When you're highly vulnerable in your life, if you've gone through a loss, if you have experienced other levels of trauma, if you're just seeking because you feel empty, you know, that makes you a prime candidate for victimization. It's not right, because ideally humans should look out for each other and should not look to exploit one another. Okay. um, I learned a lot from riding the bus and just being involved in a lot of different groups where people are truly expressing the pain that they've been through. And having gone through all kinds of crazy stuff with landlords, I mean, listen, you talk about some abuse. Oh my Lord. Um, and so many other things that are happening. Um, Being aware and being in touch puts you on guard, but being informed about what's happening makes you less likely to become victimized or re-victimized, because the system is set up for re-victimization. It really is. Okay. I had an experience with one of my therapists, and this was 5 years ago. who left her profession as a therapist and um, got involved with a political office. But don't you know, she went and she told all my business to this political person in the city. That's a breach of ethics. I mean, because she was still legally a licensed therapist, but you don't go and spill your guts about what you know about your clients. And the way I found out was because the political person who I saw at another political event came up to me and he said, I'm so sorry about what's going on in your life. So and so told me that such and such is happening and blah, 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 and blah, 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 did this and blah, blah, blah. Wow. You know, I will be addressing that. Listen, there's one thing you should know about me. I may not address something right away, especially because, listen, I've been going through a whole lot of stuff. I keep saying I'm way better than I was. Why? Because of therapy. I am somebody who, listen, if you get the right therapist, you can really do some tremendous healing. Okay. But when you get the wrong therapist, that's a problem. It sets you back in terms of your trust. And, then like, wow, how many other people should tell my business to? But I was saying, if you know me, you'll find out. I may not get to such and such right now, but eventually I do. I do. This is my year for fixing a lot of things. Yeah. So, yeah. Um, so I was saying, what happens when the person that you have been studying under, and many blessings to my students who I love dearly, and I've kicked a lot of people out. I have, because they came with their own abusive attitudes. All they wanted was the information, didn't care about me as a person. Okay. Um, but I was saying, listen, I've experienced this with my own teachers, where, well, one in particular, no, two, came to some really major crossroads in their lives and were very honest about what they were going through. I mean, I saw them go through some severe trauma and needless drama because of their home situations and also because of certain religious institutions that they were associated with. And recognizing that my mentors were human, I stuck with them and said, what can I do? You know, uh, because I still respected their wisdom and I respected their integrity in being transparent about what they were thinking, what they were feeling, and what was going on in their lives. Because we have this notion that people who are in positions of trust and power are somehow beyond human, or that they are just so perfect that nothing should be happening to them. People say that, well, if what they believe is really true, then they wouldn't be going through this, that, and the other. No, it's because of cognitive thinking and really the whole process of self-examination and realizing when you are in an abusive situation, when you don't feel comfortable, or if you've been putting up with this person who was the head of the organization, but who's a known alcoholic and a known womanizer and is known to go and pick up women down at the center square. But for the sake of the church, everybody's keeping their mouths shut. I mean, I watched as they got to these places where they said, I can't do this anymore. And I have to say that I watched their own growth, and these were already truly dynamic people. I watched how they expanded. I watched how they found peace. Where it was a struggle because they tried to hang on to these various groups where they were in leadership and also teachers, and the pain that they endured because of daring to step away from the groupthink. Now, the other side of that, I've had abusive leaders. I've been transparent about the fact that one person um, was running his own little cult, and I didn't realize it. He was running a harem and was sleeping with all the high priestesses. There were some of us he knew he couldn't get over on, so it didn't happen with me. There were hints. I was hoping I was wrong. I always thought it was strange that never got to meet any of the other people in the temple. You know, why don't we get together on holy days? What's going on? Well, they were getting together. A few of us were decidedly left out. You can't even imagine the trauma I went through when I found all of that out, and that there had been women who had been sexually exploited. There were some who were willingly participating, but others whose lives were ruined. And then I found out that the special hug that he would give me was actually a tantric hug. You know, he would tell me, you know, after I would salute him and everything, because, you know, we have our protocols in the tradition in terms of saluting our elders. And even though technically speaking, because I'm a queen mother, I didn't have to get down and show him honor, you know, and kes him the way that we call it. But I did out of respect because he was my elder. And then he started doing this thing where he would say, you know, because we got to the place where after doing the salute, then we would just embrace, okay? Because I really looked at him as my father, right? And he would tell me, hold your breath. Right, inhale and then hold your breath for 4 seconds. And I would, and then he would shoot this energy out of his heart chakra, right? Between his heart and also from the Sukti, the solar plexus. Heart is Hat or Ib. And it felt orgasmic. It was like, wow, what is this you're doing? You know, you got to tell me about this, you know? And so I said, you got to tell me before you die. What is this? And he said, well, I can teach you from the astral. Okay. So yeah, I guess you can. Well, after he died, I found out that it was a tantric hug. You have to have permission in order to do that, because it is sexually violating somebody when you're engaging that, because it is orgasmic energy. I mean, there's a whole other science that goes along with sexual energy and how it is shared, but it must be co-consensual. I felt so violated after I found out. Again, after he died, and he warned me that I was going to find out the truth of who he was after he was gone. And he was right. It was horrible. And then I found out that he had what was akin to a soft porn channel on YouTube. I almost left the religion. I had to really separate out what I believed and then also this individual who I had to really go to great lengths to cut my energetic ties from, especially even after he had gone. I had objects of his, you know, that had been passed on to me that still had his energy infused in it, you know, where I had to just get rid of them. I had to do several spiritual cleansings. I mean, I went to great lengths to break that bond. And even when people were first trying to tell me different things about him, because the fact that that energetic link had been made because of the tantric hugs, right? I had this loyalty that didn't make any sense. Like, what are you telling me? Why would you tell me this? He just died. Why would you? Why? I mean, it took a little while for the truth to really hit me, especially after I had a couple of people who, were waiting to find out if it was okay to finally tell me, because they felt it was unfair that I didn't know. Because if I had known, I would have walked away. And in fact, I had at one point walked away for 6 years because I felt something wasn't right. And also because I'd heard something from somebody else about an experience that they had had. And so I walked away. And actually, those were the 6 most profound years of growth that I experienced. But I ended up getting lured back. So it was devastating, highly devastating. And as someone who is already a sexual assault survivor, to exploit me in that way, and especially in my naivete, because knowing that I would not submit to being part of the harem, you're still going to find some kind of a way to create a sexual link with me, like it or not. And he was not the only one. And there are people today who are still doing that. There are people who have tried to leave different organizations, but they cannot. They leave and then they boomerang back in. Why? Because the energetic hook that lures them back. I've sat with people who just sat there and cried. It's like, I can't leave. I've tried to leave. I can't get out. I understand. I always end up back there. I don't want to be there. But then you find out it's because usually they've experienced some kind of a tantric energetic experience with this individual. And so because of the fact that they're not aware of how to unhook themselves, they just end up back and being in the number of all these other people and who they know how to generally cast a spell over, even though there are things that they see that just are not right. The teachings don't match up. Behavior doesn't match up. People just sleeping their way through their groups. So here's Shawanda. How are you this evening? It's good to see you. So here's what I have to say to you. For those of you who are experiencing this kind of trauma, and there's also, because I have all these notes here that I actually made last year, 2 years ago, regarding trauma. And so, I mean, there's loss, a lot of times people will find themselves all of a sudden joining the church after they lose a loved one because they can't cope. And then afterwards, they may find themselves either like really churchified, or they sit there like, how did I get here? Because they're in the moment. And, these ministers who do an altar call at funerals need to really be ashamed of themselves. You have to ask yourself, where will you spend eternity? That's so, listen, don't guilt people into joining a church simply because of the fact that they're now scared because they have death in front of them, and then also they're in grief and their feelings are all mixed up, and so now you got some new members. Shame on you. Shame on you. Chebu means restoration, but it also means the remedy. How do you fix things? This would be akin to reparations, which would be repairing and restoring. Okay. But the biggest thing is, once you've identified that you are in abusive situations, then what do? There is hope. And yes, you can leave. And I just also want to address this for people who went to Ancestor Day looking for me this year. I just didn't want to go. I started going to Ancestor Day because of this elder that was sexually exploitive. And in dialing back a lot of things, I said, I'm good. I started feeling a sense of obligation in going, not just to the ancestors, although my ancestors did not come through that port through that beach that it takes place at. And I honor my ancestors every day. But I felt this obligation to the community as a spiritual leader who is also an artist. And so I would usually perform every year. But then, truthfully, I felt so drained afterwards. A long day. It starts at 12 o'clock. You're there on the boardwalk, hot sun, and it doesn't end until like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And we have a procession to the beach. And I was also doing Ankh water blessings and for people. I felt a sense to carry that on because my predecessor had done that. And I would just leave exhausted, wet from all the from being in the water, and I'm dirty because of the sand. And most times I didn't have a ride, so that meant that I had to take the subway. You're on the freezing cold subway with all this wet clothing, which is not healthy for you. And also I found that there were a lot of people who would be approaching me who I didn't feel comfortable with. One time this man who I actually kicked out of the temple because he threatened my life because I told him, bootlegging is not legal, and you're taking money out of the wallets of these scholars that you're bootlegging the material from, and who are suffering financially today. And he was like, you can't tell me what to do. You may be my queen mother, but I'm still a man and I can still do what I feel like doing. I was like, what you're doing is morally wrong. Okay. Well, I can still do this and this. And I'm still this, and I'm not far enough from the streets where I can't do such and such and such, such to you. Okay. Think I'm letting you stay in my temple? No. You're gonna threaten me? No. No. So this person a few years later pops up at Ancestor Day, and I'm sitting there with the elders, right? We're under a canopy, it's still hot, but and you're sitting there and you have people just come up to you. Some will just go just give you so much love, which is wonderful, but then you have some people where it's just like, dude shows up. He comes over and he's just like, Queen Mother, he's in my face, right? I thought that was you. Yeah, it's been a long time. I just want to say hello. I had to say something to the organizers. Okay, there's a person here who threatened me. I don't feel safe. And it gets harder to control those kind of things when you have large crowds, and it has grown every year. So, on the one hand, that's great. But on the other hand, that leaves those of us who are spiritual leaders more vulnerable because there's nothing in place to really protect us, So I chose not to go and had a great day. I went to the Drum Fest that I always wanted to go to. That was here in the city. And then I went to the Halsey Street Festival where I had a ball. It was just like a big reunion. It was beautiful. Beautiful. So I went from what was going to be a highly stressful day to a beautifully relaxing and joyous day. And those are the choices that I'm working on now. Okay. And I can say, let me just make sure I'm clear on this. I love my Kemetic faith. I'm not a big fan of the Kemetic community or other traditions I've been in as well. But I know from what I've been through and from my own faith practice that it works for me. And I've had to separate out the people from the beliefs and the practices, and also understanding, I don't have to do all these things that are, the like right now. Listen, usually we'd be wearing white for the 42 days. If you want to do that, that's cool. There's something that's really significant about that. It puts you in a different mindset, but also it can put you in a space of groupthink because you're just doing it because everybody else does it. And wearing white is something that is certainly vital at different points of your spiritual journey, especially if you're practicing African religions. But I don't I don't see the value in being stressed out by having to wear white for 42 days. Again, there is something that's wonderful in the disciplinary practice of it. Okay, having done it every year, and there is a comfort in it. Um, but I can also say that I listen to when spirit tells you, okay, now is a good time for you to just do some separating off, because when you wear white, it is a sign that you're separating yourself off for purification. But that doesn't mean you have to do it with everybody else. I'm not saying that you should be the rebel and show up in a whole bunch of different colors when you know good and well that what is appropriate for this African ceremony is wearing white. That's a whole different thing. But I'm just saying that for me, for where I am, I'm good. The the meditation, the internalizing, the internalization, the reflection, the activity that is spurred on by your by what you're focusing on, and what you come to realize is what's important, because it takes 40 days at least to change a habit. So our doing a 42-day cleanse in whatever form is important, in setting ourselves up for a new level of success. But I remember this priest telling me that with his group, that every winter they would do this really super austere cleanse. No salt, no spices, no sugar, and they were only to eat white food for like 20 days. And I asked, okay, so what's the purpose of that? So he said, well, see, the idea is that when you're starved out of your mind and you can't really focus because of the fact that your body is facing all this deprivation, that's the best time to plant seeds. Oh, so that's like brainwashing stuff. The remedy. So in the book of Prince Harjadef, the teachings of Prince Harjadef, and that is the first oldest known book. People always say it's the book of Ptahhotep, but it is not. The book of Harjadef long predated the writings of Ptahhotep. Still potent, but the opening line says, "Clean up your life in your own eye before an outside authority does it for you." So that means taking complete responsibility for how you heal. And that means to give thorough examination as to what you do, and to not just sign yourself over to somebody expecting them to do the work for you, or allowing them to just completely reprogram you. It is about being able to reprogram yourself willingly, happily, patiently, and peacefully, in a way that makes sense to your body, mind, and spirit. Now, again, I know the idea is that you're changing and you're allowing yourself to open to new things, so that way you walk away from the bad habits in your life and you're able to grow. But what I mean is, um, when you decide, okay, I've observed this, because you don't just like jump into things. Like today, the seminar, okay, you can see people are just on the edge of their seats. And so you have a whole bunch of people who are just going to jump in without doing the homework. So by inspecting and thinking about it, then you can decide, you know what, I'm going to do this. And this is somebody who I trust to follow and to learn from. And we'll take it from there. But in the meantime, I'm not going to put myself in a position where my life gets beaten down and I get in trouble. And now I'm in trouble with the law, and the legal system is going to have to be responsible for reforming my life. Don't want to get to that place. So that's the first thing, taking responsibility for yourself. Then also, it's important to have physicians who are working in the same vein the ancient Kemetic physicians worked. The ancient Kemetic physician would ask, when you make your complaint about what was not right in your body, they would ask, okay, so how's your job? How are things with the wife? Kids okay? What's your diet like? What's your spiritual life like? All of these components went into wellness. And the ancient Kemetic physician, or Zunut, was well versed in the importance of knowing all of these aspects in order to most effectively treat the patient. You see, I have a doctor, give thanks and praise, because it's taken a long time to find a good doctor, and one that was going to stick around. The last really great doctor I had, wow, she was phenomenal. This was back in the 90s. So happy. And then I remember the day she had to break it to me that she was moving to Texas. I was like, no, because getting a really good physician is important. And see, she was that kind of person who looked at every aspect of your life. The physician I have now, same thing. She's phenomenal, right? The therapist I have, phenomenal. Um, I make sure that everybody who is in my life is really on point with what they're doing, and really caring about me as an individual, so that my history. You don't have to just look at my chart to know my history, right? Um, okay, so that applies to all areas of your life. Okay, so taking time to really meditate on the things that are important to you, but also, now when you remove something, you must replace it. Nature hates a vacuum. So if you're removing something negative, okay, so that is wuche chef isfet, the removal of chaotic energy or bad energy, um, traumatic energy. Then you want to replace it with something positive. So now, while I talked about the importance of taking responsibility for your life, I also talked the other day about doing things like having beautiful meditation music on while you're going to sleep, or beautiful scriptures that are maybe 8 hours of sacred writings, um, things that are affirming, affirming messages. So that's another way of taking control of your mind, because this is something that's happening in the subconscious sleep state. But then also, oh, this looks like a beautiful video that's getting ready to come on. Very consciously fill yourself with things that separate you from your traumatic experience. All right. And also make sure that you are fully aware of what you have been through so that you are not inclined to repeat it again. And this is where it's really significant to do the work, because we attract to ourselves what we know. You grew up in an abusive household, whether it was emotionally, psychologically, physically abusive, then that's your blueprint. And you need to change your own blueprint so that you don't keep going into these relationships. They may have a different face, but then, you're up in it and you're like, I did this again. I'm not doing this anymore. Okay. Now, also, in our practice, we work with the Aritu, which are known as the chakras. There's this whole thing about, the chakras aren't real, or, listen, whatever you believe. I know that for me, acknowledging the energy centers in the body works. And honoring the patterns in each one, especially from the Kemetic perspective, it brings a whole other layer that is truly helpful. So, beginning with the root, or Urud. All right. I did the research and found out the names that we should be using for each of these centers that are correlative to what is known in Sanskrit. But Rud, which is the root, um, that's your foundation. Many of us will find ourselves in a place where we don't want to look at what shaped us. Um, I have conversations with boomer parents all of the time about our children who either resent us or blame us for different things. And we went overboard by giving a lot to our children and doing a lot and being more lax in certain things because we were trying not to be like our rigid parents. Okay. We were trying to be all bright and shiny and new, and then found out that didn't work. So, there are a lot of us who have gone through this whole rebellion thing of trying to just not be this way, but don't really approach it in the best possible way. Healing takes time. All right. It does. I know there are people who have their religious experiences where it's just like all of a sudden they were blinded by this light, and then all of a sudden, like this whole new glorious world opened up, and so forth, and that's wonderful. But 9 times out of 10, you're still going to bring your behaviors with you. This is like when you see people who all of a sudden become rich and they've had a broke mentality their whole lives, or people who come into spaces that are really highbrow, but they bring their low vibratory behavior with them into these new spaces, simply because they think that now that they're amongst these other people, that makes them like them, instead of realizing, hey, if you really want to fit in and make it last, then you've got to do the work. Just being around them is not enough. Same thing with all of a sudden when you have money, you have to know what to do with it. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself back into the same broke position that you were in before. Caperniches. I created myself. Caper, Capri, the scarab beetle, the mind, the miracles of the mind. And miracles, yes, they happen, but you got to do the work to make sure that it does happen. All right. What you think, what you believe, that's what you attract. So when you have people who've been browbeating you, people who have assaulted you, you need to get yourself in a space where you have others who will affirm that that's not cool behavior. It's not okay. It's not okay to keep it a secret that you've been battered, or that you're being psychologically or financially abused. And we've been taught to put on a brave face in order to save family face, to save face for our abuser, sometimes also to save face for ourselves so that we won't be embarrassed. But it's a lot more embarrassing when you are not loved or respected, and when you are led to believe that abuse is that. Because once you come to a place of new awakening, true awakening, then you know to be embarrassed, and you know that you should want more for yourself. Okay, this is not to blame the victim. I'm not saying you should be ashamed of yourself. No, I'm saying once you come to an awareness of how you were treated and you see it, you feel bad. Ugh, pain, right? Trauma. You feel that, and you recognize that this is not right. So they say when you know better, you do better. All right. So the goal should be to want to do better and not slip back into that cycle. This is on the job too. We have people who we're afraid to stand up to. We have bosses that are abusive and coworkers who are abusive, and we feel stuck just because the fact that this is where we work. You know, and so getting the courage back, or getting the courage up, if you've never really been in a place of being able to speak up for yourself, if you've lost the ability to speak up for yourself, getting that courage back so that you can do that is important. Bastet is great for to invoke for courage. She's quite fabulous, really. Sekhmet is as well, but she is a in case of emergency break glass kind of energy, okay? Because the fact that it can be really intense. Her energy is one of righteous vindication, but to the nth degree, where, I mean, it's like that with Pakit as well. But with Bast, she is all about the body that is your sacred home. She's about home and hearth. She's about protecting loved ones, but mainly learning how to protect yourself. Examine the way that cats and felines in general behave. People, they get it twisted. Oh, look at the pretty kitty. I had a cat that clawed me up, and not because of me. It's because the person I was living with was abusing the cat, and I didn't know. The cat was taking it out on me. This beautiful cat, and I would just walk by, and all of a sudden, in my calf, okay, just like it was biting down on some corn on the cob or something. I mean, it was drawing blood from me all the time. Don't sleep a cat, you know. Um, but they can be incredibly protective and reassuring, and they build what Bastet builds your confidence and your self-worth back to where you are able to truly defend yourself. Okay. Okay. So I think I've covered everything that I want to talk about tonight regarding this topic. It takes a lot of strength to walk away from a community, a job, a marriage, a church where you are experiencing abuse. But you feel better when you do, because you are worth loving, and um, you're worthy of receiving respect. Well, at least that's the idea, you know. If you have been told that you're not worthy, then again, take a look at that. and see if you're being gaslit. This person's messing with my head. And again, the most intellectual people are considered threats. The most gifted people are considered targets. Um, but also the vulnerable populations are targeted. We should look out for one another. We should not allow abuse to exist in our households, in our communities, on the job, wherever we walk. And we should also hold those who are in positions of policy making and those who enforce law to be accountable too. Because one reason that society is so wayward is because of the fact that we've got so much corruption in government, in so many institutions where law should be the bottom line. And then some of the laws are whack. Okay, so this is it's where it's our responsibility to step in and speak up in order to make society better and to make your life better. My bottom line, if you have been abused in any capacity whatsoever, I encourage you to find a legitimate therapist and not one that's going to go telling your business. If you need help with finding a good therapist, you can reach out to me. But also, there are guidelines you can read about online to give you an indicator as to are, what you should be looking for. And what you want to build is a nice, wonderful, comfortable relationship with your therapist. And so, and group therapy is great too. I'm in group therapy twice a week now, and I have individual therapy once a week. Why? Because I don't want to go through any of this stuff ever again, ever. So, with that, I will say, um, I send you all love and the hope for healing just from being in this society. A lot of us need help with that. And so, Meria, which means much love. Heri, which means be at peace. Teni, which means be accountable. And Jebewi, which means to be merciful, first applying mercy to yourself in the appropriate way. Have a blessed night, sweet dreams, resui nechem.